I know where her body is and who the kidnapper is. Give me half a Bitcoin and I'll tell you.
Hey guys, so there are two other ransom notes, reported ransom notes that went to TMZ. TMZ is now reporting. One of them went this morning. The other one arrived this afternoon. Harvey Levin has said that these notes came from someone who has been sending notes in the past. This person claims that they are not the abductor, but instead someone who knows who the abductor is and who knows where Nancy Guthrie is. And in the second note sent today, the person claimed that they saw Nancy alive in Mexico. My gut says these notes are not real. I have no idea. Of course, Savannah Guthrie said in her interview that she believes two of the notes in the past have been real.
TMZ got hit up again, and it wasn't just a casual message. This person has been relentless. The content was shocking enough to make even their most hardened staff do a double take. They're claiming to have found the body. They claim to know the kidnapper's identity and are demanding 0.5 Bitcoin for proof. Before dismissing this, pay close attention to a specific detail hidden in the text that everyone else seems to be overlooking. This piece of information completely shifts the narrative. Stick around, because we're diving deep into the whole situation right now. We've reached day 65. It's been 65 days since 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, a mother and grandmother, disappeared from her Tucson, Arizona, home in the Catalina foothills. Police suspect she was snatched late at night while wearing her pajamas, leaving behind her shoes and vital heart medicine. Now, this latest message appears out of nowhere today. Before we analyze the specific contents, I want you to consider the timing, as the surrounding circumstances are crucial. Coincidentally, today marks Savannah Guthrie's return to the NBC Today show's Studio 1A after being gone for over 2 months. Dressed in yellow, she reclaimed her anchor seat and told viewers how great it felt to be back. The entire world was watching her family again, dominating every news cycle and social media feed. Just hours after she went on air, that note was delivered to TMZ. I want you to keep one specific question in mind as you watch the rest of this. Who waits until the very day Savannah returns to national TV to send a ransom demand? Is this an attention-seeking opportunist, or someone who's been lurking and waiting for the perfect moment to act? You'll definitely have your own take on this by the time we finish. Let's look at the evidence. TMZ didn't just release some brief, ambiguous statement. Those specific points they shared really need a thorough review, since the person's delivery provides just as much insight as the actual words they chose to speak.
You know, I will share a little bit of news with you. The person who has been incessantly contacting us,
although stopped for a while.
Yeah. We got another letter today from this person, an email saying, I know where her body is and who the kidnapper is. Give me half a Bitcoin and I'll tell you. And this person has been really persistent, knowing that if it's a scam, it's a federal crime.
Right. But they also made the point that they wanted to make it clear that they have nothing to do with it.
Right.
They've been out of the country, but who knows?
We forwarded
it to the FBI,
right,
as we have in the past.
Right.
And for whatever reason, and this is the thing we haven't figured out, you have to assume that the law enforcement, they believe that this person is not legit. Otherwise, they would have advised Savannah to pay the money.
Can we just be really transparent? I think you're right that the law enforcement doesn't. There's something.
I just can't figure out why.
Why not take a flyer? The price of Bitcoin is much lower now. These are like, you can just take a flyer and see what the person knows. The most you lose is 20 grand, 25 grand.
I'll tell you why. My spidey senses tell me that there's something about this guy, because one of the emails he sent said early on, time is of the essence to do this. And then the next day he said, time is no longer of the essence. If he was pulling a scam, why would you say time is no longer of the essence?
Right. You want to keep the value high.
You want to keep the value high.
Yeah.
And the fact that he said this made me think, this guy knows something.
Yeah, it's a way to look honest as well, though.
I'm not, look, I'm not FBI.
We're not privy to all the information they are, but
you're talking about the
from the outside looking in, it sure seems like this person knows something.
This isn't a hit-and-run emailer. This individual has been consistently following up with a real sense of persistence and drive. Right on the 65th day, just as Savannah stepped back into the spotlight, TMZ got another message from that same dogged source. Inside were two bombshell allegations that were completely at odds with each other, making them impossible to ignore. The message stated, "I found her remains and identified the captor. I'll talk for 0.5 Bitcoin." By explicitly saying Nancy is deceased, they've raised the stakes significantly. Surprisingly, that very source told TMZ they had actually spotted Nancy alive and well down in Sonora, Mexico. It was the exact same individual providing wildly conflicting reports. One tip insisted she had passed away. The other insists she's alive and well across the border. Think about that for a second. That discrepancy is actually a massive red flag. That's the crux of the issue. Either this individual is spinning a web of lies they can't track, or there's a much deeper mystery unfolding that we haven't grasped yet. After reviewing the text, Harvey Levin felt his gut telling him there was some truth to this person's claims. He isn't just brushing it off. We shouldn't either. Let's look at the requested payment plan, because it's quite telling. They aren't demanding the full 0.5 Bitcoin immediately. They're asking for half now, with the rest due only after a suspect is officially arrested. That tiered approach suggests a level of planning that goes beyond a basic scam. This isn't their first rodeo, either. Nearly 2 months back, this same individual reached out to TMZ, asking for 1 full Bitcoin for the info. That initial request was thrown out right away. Now, they've returned with a much more calculated and specific proposal. We need to look at why their strategy changed. It implies the sender either adjusted their tactics after the first failure, or their personal situation shifted. There's one other detail here that's easy to miss. Ever since February 11th, the source has attempted to disclose these details while being repeatedly dismissed as a fraud by the police. Apparently, they have resided outside the country for over 5 years now. According to them, and this really struck a chord, they simply seek justice and a calm life without entering the witness protection program. Imagine that, witness protection. Those are not the words of a person chasing fame or a spotlight. Rather, it is the talk of a witness convinced their safety is at stake. Harvey Levin sent the message to the FBI. After years of dealing with every type of fraudster imaginable, his professional intuition suggests this guy might be the real deal. Moving forward, we should revisit a comment Savannah Guthrie made while questioning Hodoc, a detail that many viewers likely overlooked. Savannah mentioned, and I'll give you her exact words, that she feels the pair of letters they replied to are actually legitimate. It was not just a single one, but 2. Consider the strength required for a mourning daughter who is also a veteran journalist, someone who has spent her entire career asking tough questions and analyzing people, to speak like that on camera. Federal agents do not just give grieving families a cheat sheet on which messages they find believable. Those debriefings are never that simple. Yet, Savannah is obviously picking up enough clues and context during those meetings to walk away convinced that a couple of those letters are grounded in truth. Since 2 prior messages were seen as plausible, a fresh one detailing a sighting across the border in Mexico is something we simply cannot ignore. On the flip side, we have to look at the perspective of former Police Sergeant Joe Jackalone, whose take on this really needs to be understood. Since the beginning, he viewed these demands with total skepticism. It is not that abductions for cash do not happen, but these messages break every rule in the book. Actual criminals do not reach out to gossip rags or local news. They certainly are not looking for their faces on the front page of every newspaper. They avoid federal heat, flashing bulbs, and public statements at all costs. Their goal is a low-key trade where the cash is handed over and the person is freed. The whole foundation of a functional extortion plot relies on keeping the entire situation tight and under the radar. In this instance, however, we have got letters mailed to journalists, digital currency threats with ignored deadlines, various sources, and not a shred of evidence the victim is okay. Joe put it bluntly, saying this case would change the training manuals because it completely ignores every standard operating procedure. So, what is the takeaway here? Either the individuals responsible for taking her are completely out of their depth, acting without a clue about the gravity of their situation, or maybe the letters and the actual kidnapping have absolutely nothing to do with each other. You might have the actual culprits on one hand and scammers on the other, or someone who found out the truth without being part of the crime. That theory, especially with the mention of the border, is easily one of the most tangled parts of this whole mystery. I want to give you the honest status of the search today, beyond the prepared speeches and vague updates, based on what insiders are actually saying. 65 days later, there are no suspects or arrests, and not one person of interest has been named. Our best physical evidence has also gone cold. A pair of gloves discovered 2 miles away, similar to those seen on the surveillance video, went to the lab for testing. They did not hit on any federal records. Subsequent checks linked the biological material not to some mastermind, but to a random kitchen employee who had zero involvement in the ordeal. Right now, detectives are scouring local building sites and checking employee rosters to clear names. It is slow, necessary grunt work. It is the move you make when your best leads hit a wall. You basically start knocking on every door and hoping for a lucky break. What is truly unsettling is that over $1 million is sitting there for anyone with info, thanks to the family and the feds. Anyone with the truth could walk off with a fortune without ever identifying themselves through an anonymous tip line. After 65 days, that massive pile of cash has not produced one useful lead, something Joe mentioned about that really hit home for me. If that much money cannot get someone to talk, it implies those with answers are not motivated by a payday. Something far more powerful is keeping them quiet. It could be terror, devotion, or their own role in the event. It suggests the group involved is tiny, secretive, and very good at keeping their mouths shut. Let us look at the main theory that fits the psychological and physical evidence. Joe actually thinks Nancy was not the intended victim in the first place. He suspects it was a robbery gone sideways, carried out by someone who knew the streets but was not a pro, and things turned tragic once they ran into her. Just watch how the guy acts on the camera. He is not rushing like a typical abductor would. He is taking his time and messing with the surveillance system. He is leisurely, almost like he is doing a final sweep of the property to check the exits and ensure everything is ready for the heist. Joe labeled him a novice based on the way he moves and carries his gear. His physical presence does not look like someone who has done this professionally before. A former federal agent even suggested the person on film might have been high or intoxicated during the whole thing. His walk seems a bit off, and the weight of his bag seems to wobble him. He looks intentional but shaky. Then, you look at the dates. Video shows this guy or an associate was lurking around the neighborhood back in mid-January, 3 weeks before she vanished. That was not an accident, it was scouting. Someone was tracking her schedule and knew she was by herself. They likely did not expect a simple break-in to turn into a face-to-face confrontation with a witness. The rear entrance was left wide open. Laboratory tests confirmed her blood was on the porch, and the security camera had been torn right off the house. Nancy was just gone, missing her shoes, still in her sleepwear, and without the vital heart pills she needs to stay alive. A former SWAT leader from Puma County suggested an empty house near the victim's land served as a staging ground. This allowed suspects to watch the neighborhood, track daily routines, and stay hidden before they finally decided to act. Kurt Dabb, an ex-homicide investigator from Puma County, argues that an operation of this scale would necessitate a team of 2 to 4 individuals. Based on his expertise, the sheer level of planning required makes it almost impossible for just one person to have managed it by themselves. It is clear that several folks are aware of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. Despite 65 days of silence, not a single person has talked, even with the intense heat they are facing. I want to discuss Mexico because I feel that part of the conversation was shut down way too early. The border is located only about 90 minutes away from Nancy Guthrie's residence. During the first stage of the investigation, police searched a house in Rio Rico, 60 miles south of Tucson, and briefly interrogated a man. He was eventually released, and no one was arrested. Officials from the United States and Mexican governments claim there is no proof Nancy was taken south. However, let us examine what that statement actually means when you look at the facts. Just because they haven't stumbled upon proof doesn't mean the possibility is off the table. Those are two very different things. Now that we've hit day 65, the same mystery contact is doubling down, insisting Nancy was spotted alive down in the Mexican state of Sonora. The police haven't confirmed that lead, but they haven't dismissed it either. Since Sonora shares a border with Arizona and is less than 2 hours away from Tucson, we can't just treat that info as background noise. Joe Giacalone was very blunt about the implications. You can never ignore that specific angle because as soon as you confirm international travel, the whole thing becomes a federal kidnapping case. That shift unlocks a much more sophisticated and aggressive set of investigative powers. For instance, The DEA maintains a deep network of informants and undercover assets across Mexico that local sheriffs or even the domestic branch of the FBI simply can't tap into with the same level of influence. As it stands today, there hasn't been a single official word that the DEA has been looped into this search or formally invited to help. That's a massive oversight that needs to be called out. I also have to address a major internal issue that's been sabotaging this whole operation from the start. And it has nothing to do with the actual perpetrator. Following a deep dive investigation, the Pima County Board of Supervisors officially concluded that Sheriff Chris Nanos manipulated his department's power and resources for his own political gain. Specifically, he let his rivalry with Lieutenant Heather Lappin, his subordinate who was running against him for the job, influence his investigative and disciplinary moves. He even put out a press release filled with sensitive material he only had access to through his job, timing it perfectly to hurt her right before the election. They officially upheld violations for both his ethics and his conduct. On top of that, he's accused of lying under oath about a past suspension, despite records from his time in El Paso proving he was actually disciplined. This past weekend, reports surfaced from Fox News Digital that he got caught with a loaded gun in his carry-on at an airport. No charges were filed, but a recall effort is currently moving to force him out of office through a special election. So, why does this matter to Nancy Guthrie? Insiders close to the search have suggested that during those vital first days when clues are fresh, the sheriff's office and the FBI were constantly clashing. They didn't work together well. Information wasn't being traded freely. They wasted precious time and shut down the crime scene way too early, never even bothering to perform a proper grid search. No one brought the bloodhounds back to try and pick up a trail. They didn't even file a formal request for help from the major homicide units in Tucson or Phoenix, despite those teams having way more experience with cases of this scale. According to a source who wants to remain anonymous, the lead investigator on this case had never actually worked a homicide before being put in charge of the most famous missing person search in the country. Joe Giacalone explained it perfectly. A crime scene is a one-time record of the truth. Once you walk away, it's gone for good, and anything missed in those first 72 hours might be lost to history. This investigation has been tripping over its own feet since day one. Nancy Guthrie's family deserves for the public to know that even with all these failures, this case has not gone cold. Giacalone isn't ready to give up on it yet, either. He believes the most underused tool in this whole search might actually be sitting behind bars in our local jails right now. Every single person locked up within 100 miles of Tucson needs to see that video. They need to see the suspect's face, his gait, that backpack, and the gun. Lifelong criminals move in the same circles and they love to talk. Someone sitting in a cell facing a long sentence has a huge reason to talk when there is $1 million reward and total anonymity on the table. Joe has used this tactic to crack old cases for years because it works. Loyalty to someone on the street evaporates the second an inmate needs a deal for themselves. Meanwhile, genetic genealogy is the other major path that could solve this mystery in a heartbeat. The FBI's top expert at Parabon, the very same lab that unmasked the Golden State Killer, has called the DNA samples from the Guthrie house a legitimate reason to stay hopeful. If they can pull a solid profile, this tech lets them work through family trees to find a suspect who isn't even in a police database. That is exactly how they caught the suspect in the University of Idaho case. It has been cracking unsolvable cases for decades. And then there is that one question I keep repeating that no one will touch. Was the internet router taken from Nancy's house? Because that router is a digital record. Every single phone or laptop that ever hooked up to that Wi-Fi left a timestamp and a digital footprint behind delivery drivers, guests, or anyone who ever set foot inside. If that router exists, it's a map of everyone who ever entered Nancy Guthrie's world. If you know anything at all, call the FBI line at 1-800-CALL-FBI. You can reach the Pima County Sheriff's non-emergency line at 520-35149. For total anonymity, call Crime Stoppers Tucson at 520-882-7463. You don't have to give your name, and there is up to $1 million available. Now, let's get back to the start. Is this ransom note real? Based on what I've seen, here is my honest take. Most of the ransom messages in this case are almost certainly coming from scammers who have zero real connection to Nancy's disappearance. The way they are demanding public proof of life through the media doesn't fit the typical profile of a professional kidnapping for profit. It looks like vultures taking advantage of a tragedy. However, this specific sender is different in a few key ways. The level of persistence is very strange. Messaging constantly for months isn't what people do when they just want a quick bit of attention. That's the behavior of someone who thinks they have the truth and is angry that no one is taking them seriously. That two-part payment plan, paying half now and the rest after an arrest, shows a specific logic that goes way beyond a typical low-level scam. This person has been reaching out since February 11th. That is nearly 2 months of being ignored, yet they keep sending these contradictory updates. One message says she's dead, while the other says she was seen in Sonora, Mexico. If they were just making it all up, why even bring up Mexico? A basic scammer usually just sticks to one simple story. This internal conflict either shows a liar who can't keep their facts straight, or someone passing on messy, second-hand info about a situation that is constantly shifting and chaotic. There isn't an easy answer, but both possibilities are vital. The FBI has the note now. This morning, Savannah Guthrie returned to her anchor desk and told the public she was glad to be home. She was wearing a yellow outfit. She was smiling because she said she still needs to find joy where she can. She mentioned that getting back to work was part of her personal purpose right now. I couldn't help but think about the strength it takes to do that, to sit there in front of millions, keeping it together and being professional and kind. All while the answers to the most painful questions of her life are still hidden away somewhere. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She was taken while wearing her pajamas, without any shoes, and without her vital heart medicine. She was targeted by someone who had been casing her home for weeks, someone who knew exactly how to rip the security camera off the wall. They were smart enough to prop the back doors open and vanish before anyone in the neighborhood even woke up. Somewhere, maybe in a prison, a house, across the border, or behind a keyboard, someone knows exactly what happened to her. $1 million says they haven't come forward yet, but secrets eventually leak out. Day 65. We are still here. We are still paying attention, and we won't stop until Nancy is back. What makes a case like this so haunting is not just the disappearance itself, but everything that follows in its wake. The silence, the confusion, the noise, and the exploitation of pain. At its core, this story is a powerful reminder of how fragile truth can become when tragedy meets attention. In moments of crisis, when a family is desperate for answers, the world doesn't always respond with compassion. Instead, it often floods the situation with speculation, opportunism, and false hope. Messages appear, claims are made, and people, some genuine, many not, step forward, each adding another layer of uncertainty to an already unbearable situation. There is something deeply unsettling about how quickly human suffering can become a stage. Anonymous messages demanding money in exchange for truth, conflicting stories about life and death, and the relentless pursuit of attention all reveal a darker side of human behavior. It forces us to ask a difficult question. When someone is at their most vulnerable, why do others see it as an opportunity? But beyond the chaos, there is also something profoundly human in this story: resilience. The image of a daughter returning to her role, sitting under bright lights, speaking calmly while carrying unimaginable grief, is a testament to strength that cannot be taught. It shows that even when answers are missing, even when hope is uncertain, people find ways to keep moving forward. Not because it's easy, but because they must. This case also highlights the importance of integrity in both individuals and institutions. Investigations are not just about evidence, they are about trust. When communication breaks down, when ego or conflict interferes, the consequences are not abstract. They are real. Time is lost, leads go cold, and families are left waiting longer than they should. There is also a lesson here about silence. When a significant reward cannot bring forward a single credible lead, it suggests something deeper than indifference. It points to fear, loyalty, or complicity forces that can be stronger than money. It reminds us that truth is not always hidden because it is unknown, but sometimes because it is protected. And yet, even in the darkest situations, there is a quiet persistence that refuses to disappear. Investigators continue. Families continue. The public continues to watch, to care, to ask questions. Because deep down, we all understand something fundamental. Every missing person is not just a case, they are someone's parent, someone's grandparent, someone's entire world. The real lesson is this: empathy must come before curiosity. Truth must come before attention. And justice, no matter how delayed, must remain the goal. Because behind every headline, every theory, and every message, there is a real human life waiting to be found.